I want to be a developer. Why no React, brother? You're gonna troll me already. And ciao. Welcome to the stream, man. You guys probably saw it's been a long time since I've actually used the Angular CLI and not NX to set something up. So I'm trying to remind myself how to set up the next version. Um, and I think there's an npm create command, isn't there? Am I remembering things wrong? npm Angular create command. Anyway, it's been a good while, and Chow, um, really good to see you, man. It has been a good long while. We need to catch up. Um, there's been interesting developments in life, but yeah, there we go. I knew. So npm init, and I think we'll do at next. Um, Create a new project, ng new, no standalone. This is old school Angular. It's version 17. Um, I'm just trying to decide how we want to go. Oh, am I muted? Can you guys not hear me? Are you guys, am I muted? Okay. Okay. I was really concerned. Because I can see like my audio levels. I always check my audio levels on the other when whenever I'm talking, right? I'm watching my audio levels out of the side of my eyes. Make sure I've messed up way too many times on stream. So I've learned a couple of little tricks. Um, but you guys, well, here it's easier to just let's do this. So this is what I see on my other screen, right? Um, you're getting the weird mirror effect and all of that. But I get, my stream chat. I also get my audio levels and things like that, and I can control a lot of stuff from here. So I am watching my audio levels. I was really worried though, because I have been having problems with my audio with my mic when I've been doing meetings and things like that. But let's try something out, right? So let's npm init. We're gonna do at Angular, right? Is that the right command? I'm trying to decide because I don't know if I want to set up prettier and all of that. But this is just a quick workshop. Um, uh, you know what? I'm just gonna go NX anyway. Um, we're just gonna go NX anyway, and we'll update from there. Um, so in the Angular command is really simple. That's not even the one we want to do. Um, yeah, create NX workspace. So we can just run this um, with npx. Um, yeah, we'll just run it with npx. I don't want to get bogged down in npm or anything like that, but npx create nx workspace. I don't even care about the package manager. We're gonna let it use npm or whatever it wants to use. Um, Sent you a DM on. Let me check my DM really quick, Ole. Good to see you, by the way. Um, yes, I do have messages. One new message request. Oh, there it is. Yeah, that was the one I was looking for, Ole. Um, but you know what? Um, I decided let's go with um, let's go with NX because I want prettier and some things like that. Let's see if I can force my NX workspace. Um, where would you like to create your workspace? Uh, sure. We're gonna use an Angular workspace. We're gonna do a standalone this time. Um, I wish I could use RSPack, but we're gonna use ESBuild. We're gonna use just standard CSS. No server-side rendering. Oh, look at this. We could use Playwright or Cypress. We're not gonna do E2E tests. We're not gonna worry about that right now. Um, we'll set up our CI/CD later. GitHub Actions would be the way we would choose, but we can do remote caching. Yes, we'll be using GitHub. And so it's going to create this. I didn't realize that the org name was what? Um, nice, Chow. I need to go take a look at your stuff too. Um, I have been very just deep um, in jobs right now. Just looking for a job and stuff like that before I spend all the money that I've saved. Um, and so a lot of times, I'll be in interviews or stuff like this week. A few times I missed streaming a couple times this week. Well, most of the week because I had interviews or meetings or stuff going on. Victor Mono Nerd, my editor. Victor Mono, huh? I've been using the JetBrains Mono Nerd font for mine. So like the font you see here is the JetBrains Nerd font. I did want to call out that um I got accepted to the beta for Warp. Um, so this is the Warp terminal. It's running completely native in Windows. Um, yeah, I like JetBrains Mono. It's a good clean font and it has good ligatures. Um, So, but I'll have to check out this. I'll have to check out the Victor Mono. Um, and you guys will have to forgive me. I'm still eating breakfast this morning. So this is a big moment for me. I don't like eating in public, but I also need to keep my blood sugar up and stuff. So my workspace is called Chocomil. I should have named that differently, but whatever. Um, not that cool with ID. See, and I'm still not a Vim user. Um, so I need to take a look at Victor Mono. One of the things I want to take a look at is definitely um, potentially like starting to use Vim a bit. Um, but because I use WebStorm, haven't really had a need to get into Vim. It's been a long time since I've used Vim. Um, I got for a long time in my career, I was doing Linux development. Um, I used Vim quite a bit. Oh, my puppy got locked into my office with me. Let me let her out, and then I'll be right back. Hey, sweetie, you want to go out? Mm. All right. So I'll let the puppy out. Um, we're waiting right now. Also, I've been transitioning to PHP. Yeah, for your front end work. I'm probably the only dude at work who does React who uses PHP store. You need to man. I'm in space. These basic Vim motions are mandatory. Yeah. A little bit out of context, but I recently scrolled through your Angular Sudoku app, which looks really straightforward and clean for me. In a few components, I saw you're using protected access modifier. Can you explain something about access modifiers in Angular components? Kind regards from Sherman. Hey, Mathis, welcome to the stream. Thank you. And absolutely, let's talk a little bit about that. Let's go to GitHub, right? So here, let's go to github.com. Let's go to my repo. Let's go to Angular Sudoku here. And got sniped before we even created the application. That's cool though. We're just staring at stuff working right now, right? Let's go into our libs and our components, right? Um, and in our components, let's take a look at our grid, right? And in our grid component, are we using protected? We are. So there's a reason that I'm using protected here versus any of the other access modifiers, right? And you know what, let's go let's go here. Let's go to TypeScript playground, right? And let's explore because the stuff you're seeing isn't really well, and here we go. So here's some of the stuff that we've done before talking about access modifiers. So let's uncomment the not really private, right? Let's leave truly private in place, but then let's use a protected modifier, right? And protected prop. And actually, you know what? Protected props are going to work the same way as something marked as private. So encapsulation in TypeScript is not truly encapsulation, right? And as you know, this will be a public prop, right? Um, and it's the same as if I just did public prop two, right? And so if we run this program, and here we'll just here we'll say not really protected, right? And here we're gonna run protected prop, and here, um, right, our public props, right? And these ones we can just access on the test dot public prop and test dot public prop two, right? So this is to get our and we can even look here and we can, console dot log um, protected, and we can see, our protected prop. So, TypeScript's going to give us a warning that, hey, protected prop is protected, and technically only accessible inside of the class, right? But um, not really. Um, so we've got our protected prop here, and now if we go ahead and we run this, um, we'll see that, hey, really are not really private. We were able to access, right? You can still read me. Not really protected. We can still get that one, right? By using the indexing, by using object indexers, right? We can index into these. Um, but test, the public props behave as we would expect them to. But the truly private prop, the only way to get at it is through a getter, right? So if you use the private, the little hash, the pound sign, whatever you want to call it, right? Octothorpe, who cares, right? If you use this, you make it truly private. The only way to get at it is through a getter. So the next question would be, why would we want to do this, right? But let's say, hey, we've got class and test class too, right? Extends test class. Um, and now, we need our constructor. And in our constructor, we also have to call base, right? Um, is it base? I always forget. Super, super. So we've called super, right? But now we can do this dot, and notice we've got access to our protected stuff, our protected prop, right? Um, and oh, it's not a function, right? So the big difference is I can't do, this dot not really private, right? Those aren't accessible inside of um, so when you inherit private, right? This is encapsulation, right? So private variables stick with the class. Protected variables go, can be extended, right? And so how does this help us? And protected variables are a little bit like friend in C sharp, or not C sharp, but well, any of the C-based languages like C, C++. Um, no, they're not. Don't even listen to me. They're not. they're protected, right? Classic encapsulation. Um, so the question becomes, there's some weirdness, right? Like they're not really private, blah blah blah. So why would we use them? So let's go back to our GitHub. Let's take a look at this. The interesting thing is that if I mark something as protected, I can use it in my template. So here, notice that I've got grid store listed here. And this is gonna slow everything down. Why not turn off suggestions for an hour? There we go. So we can see that I can access grid store inside my template because it's protected. Which is nice, right? Private variables can't be accessed in the template. But this allows me to encapsulate logic. So any logic that I don't want my component exposing to anything outside of the component, I'm marking as protected. So, my grid store, anything that I want available in my template, but I don't want available outside of the component, I'm marking as protected. Anything that I want to truly encapsulate that I don't want available in the template or anywhere else is private, and I don't use private very often, I'll admit. And then anything that I want available outside of the component, I mark as public. Typically, the only things that I'll set as public are model inputs, signal inputs, inputs and outputs really are the only thing that are going to be public on my components. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, but one of the biggest is one anti-pattern you can fall into pretty easily in Angular is passing your components to other components and then using public methods on those components. Another thing that this can lead to is testing, right? A lot of times people, when they'll set up tests in Angular, they'll set up component tests as unit tests. And that's not the proper way to test it. Just calling a method doesn't guarantee that your button is properly wired to that method or things like that. So if I mark all of these as protected, then this component becomes a black box to my testing environment. And now I'm forced to interact with the component. So then I have to use something like Cypress to do component testing, or Angular test library, or testing harnesses, material testing harnesses, or anything like that that forces me to interact with the component as a true component. And it's a black box. So if I push a button, I can't necessarily know that it called an internal class, right? And this is a big anti-pattern I see in testing in a lot of places, right? You go and you set up your unit test, and then you mock an internal class on the component, and then you call the function that the button would call, and you say, oh, I expect this function to be called with these parameters, right? I see this all the time. That's not really testing what you think it's testing. It's much better for you to potentially mock services in your component and then verify that the services are properly called, right? Treat your component like a black box. So this protected forces me to do that, right? TypeScript complaints. That was a bit of a tongue twister, and I don't know why. So that's the reason why we're using protected. Hopefully that answers your question, Matis. Let me know if you have any other questions. And by the way, feel free. Like I'm joking about, haven't even created the project and I'm already sniped. I go off on tangents, you guys. If you're new to the stream, do not feel bad about taking me off on a tangent. That's just what I do. That's the way my brain works. I'm easily I'm easily sniped. And Chow was the one who brought up the concept of nerd sniping me. Um, it's good to have you here, Chow. Makes me really happy to see you again. Somebody tell me that my code looks clean and that they have been looking at it. I'm still convinced that my team leader just accepts every PR I made without any hesitation. That's actually so. One of the interesting things about development right now is a lot of development teams are trying to run as in lean startup mode or things like that, right? And lean startup is just code for understaffed and everybody does a ton of things and is running from fire to fire. Um, that's my pessimistic view, right? um, but to your point, um, I want to be a developer, and I almost used your name. I don't want to dox you, but to your point, um, one of the biggest disservices you can do um, to new developers on your team, right? Not necessarily, like junior developers or anything like that, but when somebody joins the team, they're looking for feedback, right? One of the biggest disservices you can do is just click accept. Um, because they don't know if you just accepted it because you respect their reputation. They don't know if you just accepted it because you're extremely burnt out and don't really care. They don't know if you just accepted it because they actually did well. They don't know if that you secretly hated the code and you're just holding your nose while you click the accept button because you've got to get this bug fixed because the client's breathing down your neck, right? There's so many different reasons. So for developers who have just joined the team, it causes a lot of anxiety to just do accept, right? And I break this rule sometimes, right? Like depending on how busy I am, and this is where the lean startup really begins to frustrate me. Because it allows bad practices to sneak in. To do a good code review, you should be like calling out places where people do things well, calling out places where, hey, this could be better, but you don't necessarily need to change it. Let's think about it in the future, right? You should like code reviews are an opportunity for the person being reviewed to learn, but they're also an opportunity for you as the reviewer to learn, right? So if you're unsure of something, create a discussion in the code review, right? Like in your PR, whatever, right? In the PR that they created as you're reviewing it. Um, if you're not taking that time, you're doing a disservice to yourself because maybe you're not leading to good code quality. And this is where, right, my pessimistic view on lean startup comes in because a lot of times my code reviews are, hey, you changed logic. I don't see any unit tests. Add unit tests, right? Um, but I'm not providing that opportunity for people to learn, or I'm not providing that opportunity for me to learn why they did things a certain way. Um, and so, um, you know, you kind of snipe me unintentionally. You usually run in, I blame my Java backends. Everything has worked for me so far. I just assumed that I'm a god tier React front end. God tier. We've got a god tier front end React developer here, boys and girls. Happy to have you here. I want to be a developer. I did not realize that we were in the presence of such an impressive developer. Thank you for showing up, man. It means the world to me. Jason is super easy to snipe. You just ask him questions. Absolutely, Chow. Sometimes I need to stay focused, right? And there's a reason that I'm starting to work on this project as early as I am. One, I want to make sure that we can get Angular 19.2 in place, and look at the new, the new extensions to resource. Two, I haven't used resource yet, so I need time to learn it. So I agreed to do a workshop, and I was like, "Yeah, we'll do resource." That's a new thing. Nobody's really, I haven't used it yet, but we'll teach it. Um, so I need time to learn it. So we'll be doing a bunch of streams. And three, I get sniped easily. If I have to focus, I'll stay focused. And maybe I'll ask you to reach out to me privately or something like that. But one of the things, um, one of the absolute um, and I said this in my GDE interviews. The reason that I stream is my goal. Like I've been a developer professionally for a lot longer than I like to admit. Um, so um, I'm getting very, very close to have been a professional developer for 30 years. Over the course of 30 years, I've done all sorts of things, right? I've done databases you've never heard of. I've done embedded Linux systems. I've done survey engines that were homebrewed. I've done .NET. I've done Angular. I've done, you know, PHP. I've done a lot of different things. I've also worked. So I don't know what this says about me, but I've worked for a lot of toxic companies, um, and I've got a lot of experience in dealing with companies. Here's a story. So and I just sniped myself, right? But just to give you an idea of the level of toxicity that I've worked at before, I worked for this company. It was a survey company, um, and we had so Disney was one of our big clients at the time, but specifically the Disney Cruise Line. Um, and so we had this survey, and it was internally called Disney. Um, and Disney would come to us, and they would give us this survey with very little time to complete it. Um, and all the coding necessary to capture it and make sure that it worked with our dialing system and make sure it worked with our web system and all this stuff. We just implemented a brand new web system. I worked it was like 52 hours straight to get this done. They gave it to us and they said we need this in 3 days. There was no way for us to do it. The Disney survey was incredibly complex, required a lot of logic. It was just a mess. Getting it done in 3 days was nearly impossible. They agreed to it, and our equivalent of PMs are like, well, we just got to get it done. I worked 52 hours straight. At the end of 52 hours, I went home and I went to bed. It was like 3 a.m. when I went home. Um, One, I was on so much caffeine that it took me a long time to go to bed. Two, I probably shouldn't have been driving home in my state. I probably shouldn't have been writing code in the state that I was in. Um, I was a mess, right? Very, very, this was a very, very toxic company. I was very, very new in my career. I did not have a degree. I was very afraid of losing my job. I was very underpaid, very overworked, very, very toxic environment. I got home. I went to sleep. I probably fell asleep around 4:30 a.m., right? So I'm sleeping. I'm dead asleep. Um, and in my dream, I keep dreaming that my phone is ringing. Um, this is causing anxiety as I sleep, right? That my phone is ringing. My phone is. Finally, I wake up and realize, no, my phone is actually ringing. So I answer the phone, and it's my manager yelling at me. Why the hell aren't you at work? I was like, I just worked 52 hours straight. I need to sleep. You need to be at work. Ugh. I told him that I needed to sleep and finally got my manager calmed down. My manager realized I'd been working a long time. Um, but the agreement was that I would get 5 more hours to sleep and then I had to go to work and work my shift for the day. Right. I'd already worked more than my shift, but I was salaried. Salaried in Utah is a whole other beast, exempt and all sorts of messes, right? So even the notion of me having a shift, and this is something that I didn't realize, right, is that just because I'm salaried doesn't mean that you can abuse me with hours and things like that. Um, but that was just the level of toxicity, right? I'd gone above and beyond, and I was being yelled at for not being at work. um, when all I really needed to do was sleep. So sounds like a normal company Merc. I don't know why you say that is toxic. Um, yeah, but no time yet. Exactly, Chow. Just I haven't had the time to sit down and do it, so now I'm forcing myself to do it. You nearly got fired for saying the word bullshit. Um, you use that term Merca. There's some very weird stuff about living in the States, right? Um, there, people's sensitivities to certain things will change depending on the company that they're with, right? Um, people's people's viewpoints will change. Like it's such a weird society to live in, right? Where somebody that you think you may know well might change because they're around somebody else, or I don't know. I don't know about a lot of other cultures, but it's just um, it's very funny to me, just some of the weird stuff that happens in our nation and in our culture in particular. Um, so yeah, yeah, it is really crazy. Um, and I can imagine things are very crazy for you too, Chow. Like across the industry, things are crazy. Um, and I think you're probably talking about just the way things are in the States right now. Man, I do not want to get into this, right? Like, there are a couple of things that I really don't want to discuss in public, right? My politics are one. Um, it, it's just, it's such a minefield. Um, and it actually makes me pretty sad um, because if you go back and look at um, just the way things have changed over time, back in the day, political debate was a topic that was often sought out in the U.S. And people had informed, opinions on things, and they were happy to debate it, and um, people were willing to change their opinions and things like that. It's such a minefield anymore. Um, are legally allowed to have guns? See, you're trying to get me to step into a minefield. Um, and that's probably one of the biggest minefields you can step into in the US is to start talking about things like that. I want to be a developer. Um, that is a topic that I will never discuss in public. It's just way too fraught with problems on all sides. What about only Angulars? I just want some American money. Maybe not even a lot of it, just a whiff, but everything else is just questionable at least. American money. I don't even know that American money is worth much anymore. Inflation is so bad here. Inflation is getting bad enough that prices have almost doubled over the past 4 years. And I don't know about the rest of the world. The rest of the world could be the same way. But American money definitely doesn't. Yeah. Oh, American money outside of America is great. American money inside of a yeah, exactly, Chow. Inside of America, American money is not great. I I went and so um here's a funny story, right? I don't know if it's funny or sad actually, but my family, we used to eat out like once a week or whatever. With job situation or whatever, we've cut way back. Last night we decided to treat ourselves to some pizza. We went to the cheapest pizza place you can get in America, um, and it's Little Caesars, right? Pizza, hot and ready. Um, and they've got pizzas ready. It's cheap, really, really cheap pizza, but it's decent pizza, right? And so we decided, we'll eat some okay pizza. It's not the greatest pizza. It's not the worst pizza. It's very, very mid-tier pizza, right? But we hadn't. eaten anything. And so, we decided to treat ourselves. It was $28 for two pizzas and some crazy bread. Um, that is crazy, right? Like you used to be able to go get two pizzas at Little Caesars for $10, and crazy bread was $1 on top of that, right? So that was not very long ago. Um, so yeah, American money in the U.S. is just crazy. Um, yeah, you should always like there are certain topics that you should always avoid in public politics, especially in the U.S. What about you hire me for like 40K or something? I work California 9 to 5. Inflation is so bad that American flexes by buying eggs. Oh, don't make me. Oh, I would outsource for sure. I'm so sorry that IT folks outside of the U.S. are underpaid. Yeah. It, well, I think it's just it's a mess all around. And Chow's joking about eggs. But man, even the price of eggs. Like my wife one day was at the grocery store. She calls me and she's like, "What the hell is going on with eggs?" I was like, "What do you mean what's going on with eggs?" She's like, "There's only like 4 or 5 cartons on the shelf and they're $14 for 12 eggs. Like you're paying over $1 per egg." Um, so yeah. Third world country. Italy is not a third world country, my man. It may feel like it to you, but uh, I spoke about my salary with Jason. It's crazy bad out here. Yeah, it is. Um, and I don't know. It's weird everywhere. And um, there's a lot going on in the world that I definitely don't even want to bring up because there's just a lot going on in the world. Um, it's making things crazier. Um, so we'll leave it at that because this is not a political stream. This is a programming stream. Um, Failed to write commit object. Uh, we're unable to sign our stuff. Interesting. Very interesting. So the GPG signing failed. Um, but this is what I love about Warp is that Warp is actually aware of the context of what's going on and it's recognized that hey, GPG failed and Warp is actually saying, "Hey, let's turn off global commit," right? Um Pepperoni. Oh, I am sorry about that. I want to be a developer. Um I want to be a developer one day was sending me pictures of pizzas from Italy. Oh man, those looked amazing. Um, and pepperoni prosciutto sounds amazing. I want to be a developer with some olive oil, um, maybe a little bit of balsamic, and you know what I love on pepperoni prosciutto, and I don't know if they do this in Italy, but pistachio. Pistachio with a little bit of balsamic, some olive oil, um, and then just oh that man. Now I want a really good pizza. Not like Little Caesars pizza, but like a really good pizza. Pizza pizzerias in Chicago. And in the transition to the US, those Italians who were out spelled pizzalio and they spelled it. Go to the Americas, you forget how to spell. Second or third generation, right? Um, Chicago's deep dish is amazing, but my favorite style of pizza is Detroit style. Um, and Detroit style pizza is very unique in the way they put the sauce and the cheese and everything. It's like a Chicago deep dish, so it's got a thicker crust, but it's done in the deep dish style. So there's, olive oil and stuff in the bottom that makes the crust, crispy, and then, it's soft in the middle. But then the way they layer the sauce, and often the sauce is put on the very top. So the pizza's cooked and then the sauce is added to the top of the pizza after. Chicago deep dish is good. Detroit style pizza is the way I love to eat pizza. There's a Detroit style pizzeria here where I live that is one of the favorite places for my family to go. Um, just amazing um, Detroit style pizza, and the pepperoni there is ah, it's it's incredible. Let's fix our issue with GitHub. Probably the best way to do it is to um, go into here and let's create a um, new workspace. No. Um, Start a local repo. The repo name is going to be this because I was silly. Going to be there. Default branch name is main. Do they have an Angular? No. Actually, before I do that, let's just see if I've got. Let's just run git status here. Oh, it helps if I go into the directory, and here I do a git status. Okay, so it is there. And this is again one of the reasons why I like Warp, right? Warp has recognized that, hey, I did a git status. There's a whole bunch of files that haven't been added. Um, so let's go ahead and just set up our initial commit, right? So there we go. And it recognizes the git branch already, and it's wanting to push that branch. So again, if I autocomplete that, because I don't have an origin set up, right? So I could create an origin, but let's open a repo. And no, that is not what I wanted. Browse for a repo. This is what I wanted. So here we go. The first thing I want to do is, well, let's show you guys something else here, right? So one thing I can do in here is I can say, hey, rename master to main in Git. And I'll first need to check if we're currently on the master branch and ensure it exists. So I can just hit enter and it's going to run this command. So saying it's not needed. Then it's saying, hey, look, I just recognized, hey, I don't need it in PowerShell. So it checked that we're on there. And then we can use the move command, right? And boom. So there we go. We've now renamed our branch to main, and we can see it here. And this is one of the things that I really like about Warp is that things are built in a very, very nice way, right? I'm on the free tier of Warp, so I probably used a little bit of my free tokens. But yeah. Answer above was not lost. Oh, thank you for the detailed explanation example for testing. Makes sense to me. I will play around with this. Currently, I'm using private a lot because I'm not using class inheritance in Angular a lot and didn't find a reason for using protected when not using class inheritance. The only reason to use protected is if you want something encapsulated in your stream in your class, um, and you want to use that in the template. You can't use private variables in your template. That's the only reason to use protected. Um, if you're using services or things like that, you might consider making your services protected for your template, right? But I agree with your thing, that I avoid inheritance in Angular quite a bit. In fact, I just watched a video by Josh Maroney on YouTube that I really liked, where he goes over functional elements in Angular and what he's been doing to create purely functional elements. And it's something that I want to bring into my coding too, um, where using more of a functional style in Angular. And that is a little bit of a controversial position to take. So, um, yeah, exactly, Chow. Defaulting to private and protected unless you want to expose it explicitly. And really, the only times when that's needed is if I'm using inputs or outputs, but I very rarely use inputs or outputs anymore because I typically have signal store, right? And so I inject signal store at the right level. And then I use a dependency injection to get that same version of signal store where I need it. And so even then, everything's protected, right? Because I may be using the store in the template, so I'll need the store to be protected. But um, more and more of my logic is moving out of my components. It's moving into classes or functional pieces that I use then in my services and my stores that I then inject. Very rarely do I need inputs or outputs anymore. Yeah, signal state for my Angular 3 stores implementation. Yeah, signal state and signal store are amazing. Signal state is what signal store is built on top of. And signal state is incredible in and of itself. Um, signal store gives you a couple of extra pieces on top of signal state, but if you don't need signal store, signal state is a perfectly good place to stop. And I use, yeah, see, um, viewport size, that's the thing that I like about modern Angular, is you can be very, very granular about what's going on, and not kill the performance like you used to in the past. Um, found an easier way to work with reactivity. So yeah, RxJS is probably like the gold standard for reactivity. And the funny thing is, like RxJS, like is just one implementation of reactive extensions. And I'm an old enough developer that I remember when the paper was first written by Microsoft about reactive extensions. Um, and I remember reading that and having my mind blown on what you could do with reactive extensions. I've used reactive extensions in .NET. I've used reactive extensions in Java. I've used reactive extensions all over the place. Um, so there is like an RX.NET. There's an RX Java, RxJS, RX, right? Um, so it is the gold standard of reactivity, but it is also harder to think about. Um, other stuff. Anyway, so we changed our branch to main. Now we can go ahead and push. Um, yes, let's add one. We're going to add this there. The repository name, we're going to fix this because I don't like it. This will be the resource workshop. Remote name will be origin, access is public, and we'll push that right away. And there we go. Um, so immediately we're going to branch off because um, we want no, let's not branch here. Let's get everything, let's get the environment set up, and then we'll branch, and we'll branch into like step one, and then you know step two and things like that, so that people can check out these branches, and we'll tag them also as part of the workshop. So if people get behind, part of doing a workshop is making sure that people can code along and keep up. Um, but I've only got about an hour, um, probably less. So I need steps where people can get to, and then we can move on. They can check it out, and then we can, right? But I want the entire environment set first, um, and then we'll move forward. Um, so the first thing I want to do is let's just use NCU, and we'll take a look and see where we're out of date already. So this installed Angular 19.10. I want to upgrade to the next version of Angular, which should be 19.2. But we can do npx nx, and we can do migrate at angular/cli, and we can do at next here. And let's do a dry run here. Dry-run. And let's just make sure that it's gonna grab 19.2. And let's also see if we break NX here, right? RxJS for reactivity is just not good for normal components. It is way overcomplicated for what you need to do, unless it's for API cost. You're not wrong. I want to be a developer. RxJS for everything is way overcomplicating things. Where RxJS really shines is once a developer wraps their mind. So there we go. So we've got 19.2 next one. So this is where we want to be. Where RxJS really shines is once you wrap your mind around the concept of everything being streams, right? Once you recognize that user input is a stream from the user, once you recognize that application events are streams and things like that, RxJS can really start to shine, because where like the reactive extensions are really powerful is in merging streams of data and transforming streams of data, right? However, most developers don't think that way. Most people don't think that way, and it becomes a very, very difficult concept. And even people who have wrapped their minds around it, um, they have to get into a different mindset when they're reading RxJS code, because it's just such a different way of thinking about. It's just a different way of. Um, what do I want to say? Angular. I'm sorry. We're gonna migrate Angular to the next version. Um, RxJS is a very you have to switch the way you think. Humans just don't think about the world in streams, right? And so even if you've wrapped your mind around it, when you come back to RxJS code, you have to swap back to thinking that way. And RxJS code can become very opaque until you start to get back into that mindset. So even if you're very comfortable with it, it can still be a difficult concept to wrap your mind around. Um, yeah. Oh man. I think it's more for anything that is time-based and event-based. Since signals can swallow intermediate values, for example, a banner component that can close when, yeah, single pipeline with race and two event sources. The close logic is declarative. Yep. And that's the thing, right? Chow, is um, a lot of times when people talk about reactivity, they bring RxJS in. RxJS is just a tool for reactivity. Signals are another tool for reactivity, um, and they solve very different problems. And you pointed one out very, very well. And this was really explained and brought home to a lot of people on Twitter last week, where people were like, "Hey, you've got this code that's using a computed and an event with signals. How many times is stuff logged to the console, right?" Um, and it was quickly brought up that RxJS swallow or not RxJS, that signals can swallow events and things like that. And then yeah, like the race operator and things like that really like the it it really depends on the problem you're trying to solve, right? If you're just trying to get values to a template, signals like I would say 80 to 90% of the time are going to be good enough. Um, but with like Chow's example, where you start introducing more streams of events, um, and where, like he said, time-based becomes an important piece, right? So like um, maybe you've got multiple, like a click stream, you've got a button stream, you've got user typing stream, you've got HTTP sources, maybe you've got move events or resize events happening, right? All of those different streams need to be composed and understood by your application. Well, now you're in an RxJS situation because there's a whole bunch of time-based stuff there, right? But in most applications for reactivity, signals will be good enough because you don't care if events are swallowed. You really only care about the final state. You don't care about handling the intermediate states and things like that. Signals will be good enough. And I use signals everywhere, but I fall back to RxJS when I need it. Um, yeah. So Matisse says, I think RxJS is very great for normal components if you want code declaratives. Signals for me are on the one hand easier for beginners, but it might be a step back in declarative programming. And yes, signals become easy for people because it allows them to keep that imperative mindset, right? One of the big problems we have with people learning programming in general is it's very, very easy to teach imperative programming. And so a lot of people graduate from university or college with a very, imperative mindset. A lot of people come out of coding with very imperative mindsets. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good way to think about things. But that step to declarative can be difficult. And that declarative step will really level up your coding. I think that's a very insightful comment. And on the other extreme, that I will try to use signals. Yeah, I see that, Chow. Angular developers are not ready to drop the 500 arcs. Yeah, exactly. I have this idea that they have been brainwashed that functional or declarative or whatever type programming is better or whatever. It is just coping. Um, so it's not coping and it's not brainwashing. Different tools serve different roles, right? And the funny thing about like JavaScript or ECMAScript, as it's now called, right? The reason it was called JavaScript was because they renamed it because Java was huge. And they wanted everybody to think of it like it was Java. It's not really like Java. It's more like Prolog or some other functional language. Um, and it was put together in a day. But it's a very functional language. And that's where a lot of the weirdness comes in ECMAScript, right? Is that it's a functional language that we try to treat as like a traditional OOP language. It's not a traditional OOP language. And the more we try to force it that direction, the weirder it gets. So the reason a lot of people think functional is better in like ECMAScript is because it is a functional language. And things tend to work better functionally. I mean, there are other reasons to think about functional and declarative programming, right? And functional and declarative programming are often two different things also, but they tend to go hand in hand. Um, but my take on it is that they're tools that you should have in your tool belt. You should understand what functional is. You should understand what declarative is. You should understand imperative. You should understand procedural. You should understand all sorts of different types of programming, and you should know when it's best to use which one, right? That's going to make you the best possible developer that you can be, um, because the reality is when you're writing code, your job is not to write the best code. Your job is to write the code that will best solve the problem, um, given the constraints that you're given, right? And quite often our constraints are time and money. Um, I would say almost 99% of the time when you're writing code for the real world, your constraints are time and money. Uh, and so having a tool belt with tons of different tools allows you to hit those time and money constraints and make important trade-offs, understanding what those trade-offs mean. Um, React is better because it declares things like React 3 Fiber versus Vanilla 3JS is a prime example. But in reality, it's why are you trying to make Angular more like React? At this point, just drop Angular and write React. Not though, it's just a trade-off. React is declarative and simple. I love that. But its context API is 10 times less powerful than Angular's hierarchical DI. Yeah. But I like writing code with Angular, but at the same time want some experience with the custom hooks provide. And that's the benefit, right? Like everybody says you're trying to turn Angular into React. No, that is the wrong way to look at things. It's not trying to turn Angular into React, Reangular, right? There we go, you guys. It's Reangular. No, and Chow, you stated it very well, and I think I'm going to steal this because I've been trying to explain the same concept. It's not turning Angular into React. It's that Angular can recognize that, hey, Vue does this better, and Angular do something similar. Hey, React does this better. Can Angular do something similar? Right? If Angular just digs in and they're like, no, we're Angular, we don't change, we do it this way, blah blah blah. And there is some benefit to that, right? Because Angular is used at big corporations, and that stability is helpful. But we also have to recognize that others do things better. And we need to be willing to um, while we're doing this, npx nx migrate at angular / core at next. But we have to be willing to recognize that there are others out there doing things better than us. Can we do something similar? And if we can, what is the potential harm in bringing that in, right? There's a whole bunch of considerations, but it's not that we're trying to turn Angular into React. We're trying to keep the same power of Angular, but at the same time recognizing that React does a lot of things well, and some of the things it does better than Angular. I like your example, Chow. I'm going to have to steal it. It looks simple, but when you get it with a lot of foot guns, applications developers don't use context because the libraries they use implement context for you. The mental overhead of a React component is super high. Yeah, I agree. The mental overhead of React is bad. Um, but if I could take the simple right, yeah, and I agree with you, Chow. And that's where I think Brandon and Chow and Josh really hit on something really impressive with Analog. Analog took a lot of the ideas that Chow has, a lot of the ideas that Brandon has, and a lot of the ideas that Josh has, and kind of smashed them together. And it's changing the way that we think about Angular um, in such a good way. Um, and that's what I really like about um, just the direction that Chow and Brandon um, I love the direction that they're taking things. Um, I need to upgrade schematics, and then I think we're good. Um, npx nx migrate at schematics. JSX can be dreadful. It's so easy to create messy stuff. Um, this is so one of the problems, right? It's not that it's not that JSX has the problem, right? That's not the problem that you're hitting on here. I want to be a developer. This goes back to the concept of Visual Basic. Visual Basic made it so easy for anybody to write code that anybody could write code. And so anybody who was determined enough to write code could write bad code to do things that were cool. And then people would take those bad things that do things that were cool and create more things on them, right? And so you wound up with a ton of bad code because it was written by people who had very low experience with programming, creating cool things, right? Same thing with React, right? React lowered the bar so low that anybody could create code. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But when you lower the bar low enough that anybody can do it, you're going to get bad code. Does that mean that they're bad developers? No, they created something that works, right? Can we recognize that the code is bad? Absolutely. Would I write code that way? Probably not, right? Um, but I don't think it's a problem with JSX. The problem is that JSX makes it so simple that anybody can write bad code in JSX. Um, Imperative mind shifting to declarative might be really hard, but imperative versus declarative shouldn't end in exactly. There are a lot of Angular APIs or components which force you to write imperative code. Yep. The truth might be in the middle of both imperative and declarative. And you hit on a very important point there, Matisse, right? Um, here's the way I look at programming. When you first start out programming, I expect you to be passionate about these debates, right? Imperative versus whatever, right? Linux versus Windows, React versus Angular. I expect some passion there, right? That means you care about what you're doing. As you mature, I expect those discussions to become less and less passionate. I expect more. Well, I prefer this, but I recognize that X, Y, and Z, right? And then you can have more reasoned discussions, right? Um, and to your point, Matisse, and correct me if I'm saying that. I'm saying Matisse because it's I think that's a German pronunciation, but if I'm saying it wrong, please correct me. Um, but to your point, um, too often as developers, it's really, really easy for us to get bogged down into what I call the swamp of perfection, right? Um, The swamp of perfection is where we spend all of our time and effort arguing about what is perfect and very little time making progress, right? You just get sucked down deeper and deeper into the swamp of perfection. And it becomes more and more difficult for you to reach your goal until you're to the point where you're so stuck that you just give up and you start investigating another swamp of perfection, aka a rewrite, right? Um, as developers, we need to recognize that yes, we may have a preferred way of doing it, but there are going to be constraints, right? Maybe Angular is the best way to write something for whatever you're trying to do. However, every developer at the company knows React or Vue. Picking Angular is not a good choice. And if you pick Angular, you're going to get stuck in the swamp of perfection, right? You should pick what most of your developers use, right? Um, maybe, I don't know. There's just a whole bunch of ways for us to get stuck in that swamp and being able to recognize a middle ground and also being able to recognize that, hey, the business has needs and the business is what pays for me to be able to write code. So I need to meet the business's needs. Those are important things to recognize. Uh, take JSX over Angular string template, and I don't even remember the last time I wrote anything really. String template in Angular requires a lot of work in the compile. Yes, exactly. Um, and yeah, Chow. And for those of you guys that don't know, Chow is very, very deep into the Angular compiler. So when Chow is talking about what it takes to turn an Angular template into code, um, he is somebody you could definitely listen to. Wrote some Angular code and I purposely stopped doing it. Where JSX and TSX can extend anything. Yep. Best in class safety in the front end scene. Yep. I could totally debate. Yeah, and yeah, I got sniped, right? Um, pronunciation is great. Thanks. You have a link to the video of Joshua. Yeah, let's find Josh. 'Cause you guys like you guys should definitely youtube.com Josh. I'm probably spelling his name wrong. Nope, there he is right there. And he's had this great series lately that I've really enjoyed. It's right here. The Hill I Die On. Um, so let me grab this one, and I'm gonna pause it. And this series has been amazing because Josh is building a game in Angular. So this is a game that he's building in Angular. And I watched his video on he had a series of videos on fire spreading, and this really got me into this. Like Josh is doing some incredible stuff. So let's give you this link. But I highly recommend you watch all of this stuff, right? So this one is impressive, where he's talking about how he improved the performance of his game using profiling. And this sawtooth curve, when I hover over it, it goes away. But the sawtooth curve you can see here, the up and down jaggy stuff, notice how it's going up. He's leaking memory, and he goes into why. Like as somebody who's done a lot of profiling, I immediately recognize the memory curve, and I immediately recognize the memory leak. But um, that's good. This one's really, really good, where he goes into the really, really deep reasons of why symbols exist in ECMAScript. Um, I loved this video. This video is um, one that I didn't even know existed until Josh created this video on it. So like his recent videos have just been amazing. If you guys are not subscribed to Josh, and why am I not subscribed? I should be. Oh, because I'm not signed in. That's why I'm not subscribed. If you guys aren't subscribed to Josh, you should definitely be subscribed to Josh. Um, his stuff is amazing. Um, so yeah, when Vue is basically the best front end Angular. I hear this is the Super Bowl of coding streams. Oh man, I debated this morning calling the stream off. 153 viewers right now, you guys. This is my most viewed stream in a long time. 150. Thank you. First of all, I need to look into the camera and say this. Thank you all very much for being here. Like it, the reality of like the way life has been for a little while, it's difficult to think about myself as a good programmer. Um, there's a lot of mental stuff going on right now, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank all of you for participating. 154 viewers is impressive. That's across 3 platforms, right? That's Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. um, it's one of my bigger streams that I've had in a long time. We're still down from where I was when I was much more regular, and that's why I'm trying to get back into being more regular. But you guys, thank you for being here today. It means a lot, especially for an Angular stream where we haven't talked about a lot of Angular. Um, but yeah, who cares about Angular? React Vue is the best. Um, Sarah Drasner came to us from the Vue team, um, and she has been doing amazing stuff with Angular since she came over. Um, so Vue has an amazing view on the front end world, and I love the stuff that they've done. Um, like Vue used to be the joke framework, right? Where the joke was, if you were at a corporation, you did Angular. Um, if you needed to get things done quickly, you did React. And if you still hung on to Angular JS, you did Vue. Right? That was the old joke. That's definitely not the joke anymore. Vue has been doing some amazing things, and definitely need to be recognized as a really good front end framework. We'll write JS code. We will all meet at McDonald's, eat burgers, and die of diabetes drinking Coke. At the least, I'd like to die on pizza instead of burgers. Yeah, I I agree. You know, maybe we could get some Korean barbecue and buffalo wings in there every once in a while too, and I would die happy. Um, Look at our choice of UI libs as React. And yeah, you guys have sniped me so well today. Um, but Ole, there's a reason for that. Um, I say I don't want to get political, but there are certain types of politics that I think we need to address. And Chow is much better positioned to address this. You would not believe the hate that happens when people try to produce libraries in Angular. Um, and this is one of the dark sides of Angular. And I've experienced this myself to a lesser degree where people talk about the Angular way of doing things, right? Um, if you choose not to do things the Angular way, just the amount of hate you will get encourages you not to do something new, right? And the effect of that is that we get fewer libraries. Um, we get fewer new ideas, things like that. So there is a very real piece to that. The other piece to it that we just have to recognize is React is huge, right? And because React is huge, it gets the people who are willing to develop libraries, right? It's just a law of large numbers type thing, right? Um, at certain at a certain point, you're going to reach a tipping point where you're just going to get more and more and more of a certain thing, right? React gets more and more and more libraries because they've reached that tipping point. Angular has the problem that we've got politically, but it also has the problem that we just don't have enough developers that have pushed us over that tipping point. Well, maybe we do. Who knows, right? But yeah, Bond Me. Oh, yeah. See, um, um, I could put a bed outside near the. You guys can go eat pizza when we wake up. But Signal and Inject, it's better now. Yeah. Also, I heard that the Angular team wants to fix content protection. Depends on how they fix it. It might make things better. Yeah. Um, React is huge, mostly in the US. In Europe, there's a lot of Angular and Vue, and also okay-ish React. And there's a graph showing that in a lot like France, Angular is huge in France. Um, yeah, 6.0 breaks constructor DI, inject will have it stay. That so, Michael, the reason for inject is specifically because um, TypeScript actually broke DI injection back in, I want to say TypeScript 3.4, something like that. Um, Angular actually turns on a flag for you that TypeScript has turned off by default. And that's what allows the constructor injection to work. TS 6.0 is going to completely do away with that flag. And Angular's response to that in TypeScript 5 was inject. Inject is there specifically because of what you're talking about, Michael. Um, Angular is equally huge. Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Just the experience of developing an Angular library that would match the DX threshold some of these devs want for these libraries is just not possible. And that, yeah, right. That goes into that's a more politically friendly way of saying it, Chow. Um, but being a person who's watched people develop libraries, and just seeing some of the stuff that gets sent their way makes me sad. Um, Somebody out there doing something that doesn't affect you, um, regardless of how they market it, regardless of how they sell it, um, does not give you the right to wish some truly horrible things on them or their family. Um, and um, and it does not give you the right to smear people, start smear campaigns. It does, like, when it comes down to it, we're all trying to do the best we can. If you disagree with me, great. Tell me you disagree with me. We'll, if we can have a civil discussion, we'll have a civil discussion. If not, we'll move on, right? Um, but yeah, there are some truly brilliant people out there. And one, so we're completely off topic today. We're gonna have to pick this up tomorrow morning, and actually write the code. Um, but one good example of this, and a very public example of this, um, has to do with RxJS, um, and not RxJS, has to do with NGRX. Um, and if you guys don't know, Mike Ryan and Brandon Roberts, were kind of the face of NGRX for a long time. And the interesting thing is that Mike Ryan and Brandon Roberts were at conferences giving talks on you may not need NGRX, right? Um, and they came up with the idea of the Sherry principle. They came up with all these different ways to explain that, hey, NGRX might be too much for your application. Well, NGRX was marketed as the silver bullet to solve all of your Angular problems, right? But then it came out that, hey, NGRX could lead to some problems if you were using it in the wrong way or in the wrong applications. Um, and that's when a very well-known conference, um, basically ripped NGRX apart in public while Mike Ryan and Brandon Roberts were there. And they handled it very well. Um, I don't know how I would have handled that, to be honest. Let's go ahead and install this while this goes on. Um, the chilling effect behind the scenes is that they both kind of stepped back, um, right? It hurts to be taken apart so publicly. Um, what is going on here? Um, let's do the legacy peer depths, right? So we're gonna use the legacy peer depths here, to allow this to go through. Um, and usually this is stuff you have to do when you're using a next version, right? Um, hey, Chow, it was good to see you. Good to have you here. But yeah, thanks for being here, man. I feel like if Analog didn't experiment with alternate authoring formats, the Angular team's discussion of authoring would have been 10 times wilder. Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct there. Um, the stream has been going on for 2 hours and the streamer hasn't installed the app. Exactly. Exactly. Um, all day, every day. Exactly, Michael. When you're dealing with pre-release versions, sometimes you have to. sometimes you have to use flags that you wouldn't normally recommend. We're not going to mess with the rest of this, right? So now we need to decide on a UI library. Um, and the UI library that I like to use is Daisy UI. So let's go ahead and grab Daisy UI. But to do that, we need to get Tailwind installed. And then we can just add Daisy UI. So I need to go to my NX here and let's add Tailwind. Using Tailwind with Angular. Here's the one we want right here. So we're just going to copy this. We're going to paste it. And here, oh, come on. Actually, I don't even think I need the project. I think I can just run this in the root and it should add Tailwind to my project. Yeah, so we're gonna add it to this project. And we're gonna have to run the npm install because it doesn't like this with the legacy peer deps. Or it's just reporting some stuff. So let's just go ahead and just say, hey, npm nx serve, and let's see if it works. So I like to get Kraken suite for how easy work trees make things to compare the same app in two different states. Yeah, I like Git Kraken. Why are you using Git Kraken instead of Git? um, so part of the reason that I'm using Git Kraken is because I was using it um, before I was on JetBrains. JetBrains is pretty good, but I have a pro license with GitKraken. It does work really, really well with work trees, and that's one of the things that I haven't done so much on streaming, but I used work trees all the time at work because they allowed me to do some really cool stuff. But I love GitKraken, and it is a good, um, it's a very good environment. And that is the wrong browser. Um, so let's go ahead and just copy this. And bring it up here. So there we go. We're running using um, using Daisy UI, and everything's serving. So we're in a state where we can start using our resource. We're running 19.2, and our application is fairly small. We can make it smaller if we wanted to. Yeah, I think we're in a good place. I've never done H plus enter. Oh, well, that's cool. I didn't even know this existed. Very cool. I haven't used that at all. Um, so let's go ahead and commit this. Um, we're going to stage all these changes. And we're going to say that we added Tailwind and updated to Angular 19.2. There we go. And so the next thing we want to do is just add Daisy. To add Daisy, all we need to do is just do an npm i-d Daisy UI. So let's go ahead and copy that. And we can paste it. The thing that I love about Warp is that Control C and Control V just work. So, all the stuff where you right click or middle click or who knows what, right? I don't really have to do that so much with Warp. A lot of good things about this terminal. Um, all right. So we've now got Daisy in place. So let's go ahead and serve our application again. And this time we should see the Daisy UI stuff pick up in here. Oh, no, we haven't. We don't have Daisy set up. We definitely don't have Daisy set up. So the next thing we need to do is let's open up WebStorm because we need to make some changes, right? In our Tailwind config, we need to add the required Daisy UI. So we're going to open project and where is it? Oh, I just couldn't see it. Very weird. Okay. Oh, I need to update my Copilot stuff. Not to do that after the stream. Anyway, we want to go into our Tailwind config, and as it said, we just need to require Daisy UI in our plugins. So right here, we can just require Daisy UI. So there we go. Cannot find module Daisy UI. Really? Interesting. So let's go. was just going to be faster to find my package.json. Is Daisy UI in here? There's Tailwind. I don't see Daisy, so it's probably correct. So let's go ahead and make sure that we added it. Our legacy peer deps. Hey, thanks, Michael. I need to end here soon too. For those of you guys who, um, it may have become in the U.S. today's a big day. It's Super Bowl Sunday. There we go. So now we've got Daisy UI in place. And I opened the wrong one. Go and refresh here. So this one is using a light theme. There we go. If I turn it off, this is the Daisy UI theme. You can see that it's changed the way buttons look. We've gotten different hover effects and things like that. So we'll be using Daisy UI. So let's go ahead and commit this. And we can just say that, hey, we added Daisy UI. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to tag this. There it is. We're going to create a tag here, and this tag is just going to be starting. So there we go. So now we've tagged it. We can see that, hey, this is the starting point. And now, in the workshop, I can tell people, hey, check out the starting point. And so at this point, we're going to branch. And our branch here is going to be adding a, this branch will be a task, and it will be add resource. So there we go. So we've now got our branch in place called adding or add resource. And so now it's time to actually, I'm wrong. We need to go back to main, and actually I want to delete this tag. Yes. And let's delete this branch. I did hear somebody following. Where's my delete? There we go. Let's check that out. Hey, Manny Vibes, thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. We're getting close to the end of the stream, but let's get in and make sure that we get everything going, right? So we don't want this NX page to come up, right? So we need a plan as to what we want things to look like. But for right now, let's go in and let's collapse everything and go here. And if we look inside of our source, we've got our app component and our NX welcome component. We can get rid of this NX welcome component. We don't need it. We're going to delete it anyway. Let's see our routes. We don't have any routes going on. Our config, we're good there. Actually, we don't want zone change detection. We're going to go. We're going to leave this as vanilla as possible. I was about ready to say we'll change it to being. We're going to go zoneless, but let's leave it as vanilla as possible. So in our app component, it is referring to these two objects. Why are we're not using either of these, so we can just get rid of both of these. So there we go, and now our application is just going to be what? Why do I have this? I shouldn't have this. Oh, we've got a router outlet in here. Well, this is why we don't do this. In fact, we're just going to delete this. Delete this. And here we're going to go from a template URL to a template. And our template, you know what? We'll add a router outlet anyway. So we're going to add our router outlet. Yep. So I didn't need to remove that, but that's okay. There we go. We got our router outlet, and here at the top we can also say, we'll just say H1, welcome to our Star Wars app right now. Let's go take a look at that. And things are not looking great. So we need to make some changes, right? Using Daisy, because we want to get something that will look pretty and be easy for people to work with. So we've got Daisy in place, but we want layouts and typography also, right? But you should use the official Tailwind CSS typography plugin. It handles everything. So we want to add the Tailwind typography to our repository. To do that, we just need to do with the -d. So let's go back to Warp. Let's add a new tab. Control-Shift-T. Okay. It's been taking a while with Daisy for my PowerShell to start. But there we go. So here we can just say, hey, we want to, with the legacy peer deps, there we go. And we've now got this in place. So now we can follow the, so we've installed this. So now we just need to require Tailwind CSS typography. And in the in the Daisy, it said to make sure that we require this before Daisy, so we just require at Tailwind CSS topography. There we go. And now our H1 should look better. Did it rebuild after I did that? So maybe we need to do some more. Let's take a look. Now you can use the pros classes to add sensible typography to styles to any vanilla HTML. So I think we need to add pros to our app component. So with our app component, what we can do to add our pros, because our app component includes our router outlet, is right here, we can also add a host. And in our host, we can add class, and let's add the pros class to it. So there we go. And we're reloading. So there we go. Now our H1s look better. Now we're using the fonts that we expect and things like that. So now we can use the stuff from typography, right, to make our stuff look better. And the cool thing about this is, you know, we could use like Pros XL would make things bigger, so we can actually change the default body font, right? So by just adding Pros, I think Pros Base is the one that comes by default. But we can do a whole bunch of stuff using Pros. But yeah, notice here. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can do to modify this. So we've got our topography in place. Our heading 1, maybe we do need to do Pros Base because ours seems to be, oh, I'm at 180%. That's the reason. If we zoom out, yeah, that's right. So to make things easy for people to see, we're zoomed out. Let's add some layout to our class too. Since we're using Daisy, this becomes a lot easier. So up here, right, it's got the different layouts and stuff. Let's go take a look at our layout here. So let's do like a 90% layout, right? So here we can say we've got our pros. Let's just go pros base to be safe. And the other thing we're going to do is a max dash W dash we'll do a 9 out of 10, right? And um, let's also add a card to it, right? We'll make this a card that holds everything. Topography, backgrounds, borders, facts, filters, tables, transitions, transforms, interactivity, um, components. Oh, I'm looking at the tailwind. Um, let's look at our components. So we want a card component here. Um, if we look, our card just has a card and width 90 shadow. So we're going to do a card and we're going to do a shadow XL. So we can say card and shadow XL. And this should update our view. So we can see the documentation or the card here. Let's go with background. Let's copy some more of what they're doing, right? EG base 100. So we'll do the same. EG base 100. And that should give us our background. Our background is slightly different from the foreground, but we want to get this. That's not 9 out of 10, is it? Inspect this. I have my max width set up wrong. Let's take a look at max dash W 9/10. Let's try this instead. So we've got our container. Nope. This is like just making sure. There we go. Um, on the bottom for now. Yeah. There we go. It's hard to see the card based on the background, but let's take a look at let's make our PG base. Let's try like an 80 here and just see if we can get. I don't even know. It looks like it's showing up okay in the compression. If I tried the V5 beta, I haven't tried the V5 beta for No Sigma. I want to try and make this because it's for um, a workshop. I want to try and add as few variables as possible. So we'll stick with the V4, but I do want to try the V5 beta. I do have the Dynos UI that we could upgrade to the V5 beta. Um, that would be a good thing to do on stream. Um, so yeah, I think that would be a fun thing to take a look at too. Um, but um, we've got our Star Wars app here. EG base dash 80. Let's try a 60. Or no, that's not right. Let's try a 500 here, right? I believe colors are based on um let's go take a look at colors. Instead of trying to feel it out because it's been a while since I've done Daisy, let's take a look at colors. Colors, here we go. So BG green 500, BG orange, BG blue, BG primary, secondary, accent. So primary, primary content, secondary, secondary accent, neutral. We've got base 200. We could do base. So base blends in with the background, but what if we tried like a base 300? So base 500 doesn't exist, but base 300 does. What I want to do is just have that card. There we go. There we go. So our card sticks out off the top. Let's try a base 200. Because if we look at the colors, the 100 blends in, but 200 and 300 are slightly darker. So, it's not where we want it to be, but it'll do for now. Um, so let's pull it down off the top also. Let's give it a margin top. And actually I want this to be a PX8, and let's give it a margin top of 8 also. And that's going to pull it down from the top. So maybe let's go with the margin top of, let's cut that in half. We'll do a margin top of 4. So there we go. So now we're in a better place. The other thing that we should do is on our H1, we can just add a class here. And let's do so when we take a look at our colors, right? We've got like a primary, a secondary, right? Primary content, accent. Um, let's let's just make this our primary color, right? Then we need to talk about a concept for the application. S equals primary. Why not colors right? And this is where I always have to remind myself. Um, oh, I want text dash primary. Um, Now it will give me the proper foreground text color. There we go. So I've got a couple of concepts that we can do. Hey, TBD Gamer, I keep seeing you streaming, but I'll be honest, I don't get up that early, man. But um, your streams have been looking very, very interesting. Welcome to the stream. Um, we're right at the end of it, actually. Actually. I keep saying actually a lot. We'll pick up tomorrow. We've got kind of our theme, but there are a couple of application themes that or ideas that we could use. Um, One of the common ones, and Deborah Corrado uses this one a lot, so I'm a little bit less likely to want to steal her idea. But she likes to use Star Wars vehicles, right? And let's go take a look at Swappy. Um, Star Wars API, swappy.dev. Um, so with Swappy, we can get a whole bunch of information, right? So Wookiee encoding. What is a Wookiee encoding? That's hilarious. But we can get people, films, starships, vehicles, species, or planets. Um, so I have kind of two types of applications, right? And in mind. One application, we could use this to use people um, and do almost like a Tinder style um, application where um, we would pick a random group of people from the Star Wars universe. And the idea would be, hey, you're going to build a team of like four people um, to go, I don't know, do whatever, right? Um, and depending on how far along we get, we could even take this idea even further and say, this person, we could have AI, right? Say, the first prompt would be, hey, tell us about, the mission you're trying to do. And then we could have um, an AI analyze it and tell us, hey, would a Sith, a bounty hunter, a Jedi, a rebel, who knows, be most likely? And then we could filter people down to hopefully those types of. So if we take a look at the people schema, so we can get the name, the birth year, hair color, height, skin, homeworld, film, species, starships, vehicles, created, edited. We may not be able to do that because like we're looking at um, Luke here, and he's not listed as being like a Jedi or anything like that. Attributes, title, producer, starships, vehicles, species. Planets. So maybe the AI I did doesn't work. But what we could do um, is we could potentially grab like all the people. But I think we can do more than that. So if we go take a look at the documentation, there is some rate limiting. So 10,000 API requests per day. Um, so there's no authentication searching. So what I'm curious about, so here's the search filter. What I'm wondering about is like and maybe we don't need to worry about randomization early on. We'll think about that later. But um so the idea would be um where's my Excalibur? So we'll get a new canvas. So the idea is um here's our app, right? And then um within the app we would have this area um and this would be um the person to choose. And at the bottom, we could have, um, your typical swipe left, swipe right type stuff, right? And then over here on this side, um, this would be the card, right? The people who have been chosen. Um, so, right, choice one, um, right, and then at the bottom we could have 1 out of 4 chosen, right? Um, and then we could also have like, you know, 200,000 credits. right? Have a price of some sort down here. So this would be kind of the idea, right? Just a simple application that has two lists, right? Well, this is just going to go through the people. If you swipe left, then it's going to pick another person in the database. If you swipe right, it's going to add it over here, and then there will be a price associated with them. So there will be information on this card, um, and then the total price and things like that. This is the application, right? Where kind of like I've been saying Twitter and the swipe left and swipe right. Have I been saying that the whole time? I just about said Twitter. Not like Twitter. Like any dating app. Swipe left, swipe right. I don't know why I've been saying Twitter. You PM'd me on Twitch. Let me know. I was saying Tinder before. Okay. Okay. So I never know, right? Like, man, have I been sounding stupid the whole time? Let me check my Twitter. Absolutely. Um, don't have a Discord server set up, TBD Gamer. Um, are you on LinkedIn? Um, if you're on LinkedIn, message me there. That's the best way to get to me. Um, but let's talk about maybe doing a collab, um, where I could come on and we could do um, a collab with and help you set up your Signal store in a collab. Um, so um, if you're not on LinkedIn, keep messaging me on Twitch, and I'll respond to you after I end the stream. I'm gonna end it right now. We've gone over by about 20 minutes, and I need to go get ready for the day. Um, I well, there's stuff to do because of being Super Bowl Sunday, so I need to go get ready for the Super Bowl. But thank you guys all for being here. It was it was a lot of fun. We'll be back tomorrow. And TBD Gamer, let's work out a collab where I'll come join your stream, and we'll figure out how we want to do things and how to lay things out, and we can talk about it there. Um, but yeah, I would love to meet you, and just uh, talk about Signal Store on your stream. So let's do that. Um, all right, you guys. You guys have a great Sunday. If you guys are watching the Super Bowl, hope your team wins. I don't have a team, so I don't care who wins. Um, but um, if you're not watching the Super Bowl, have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll be back tomorrow morning to keep building this app. We're going to build it in chunks, right? So the first piece is just getting everything in place for this layout, where it doesn't work, but things can be added in for the resource. And then the next piece will be adding in resources, right? To get this piece to work and then to get this piece to work. And I think that'll be about an hour's worth of time with people working through it themselves. Um, and then, I'll need to prepare some slides for the presentation and all of that too. But I think we'll be in a good place. Um, anyway, join us tomorrow. You guys have a great rest.